Hello, welcome to the Bearded Tits podcast, hosted by me, Jack Perks. Professionally, I'm a wildlife cameraman, but I dabble in podcasting, and each Tuesday we release an episode as I have a chat with scientists, artists, filmmakers, and passionate people all about nature in a light-hearted and certainly not serious way. Hello and welcome to the Bearded Tits podcast. I'm your host Jack Perks. Now we're already past the halfway mark for this series. I do 20 episodes per season, so it is fast approaching. This episode is a Jack Does, and this is where I go out with the outdoor mic and I'll do an activity and record what we're doing. In this case, it's rock pooling. I haven't done as many of these this series for two reasons. One, I'm really enjoying interviewing people. I find it fascinating talking to people about their passions, and I like doing that style. And two, I'm running out of outdoor activities. There's only so many naturey things that you can do that are of interest on a podcast, and I'm running low. So if anyone's got any suggestions of things that I should do, maybe moth trapping. Although again, I could do a moth trapping podcast, but I think on my own, it's not going to be that interesting. I'd have to get an expert in. So I don't know. Anyone's got any suggestions, fire them over at Instagram, at FishTwitcher. That's my Instagram. Drop me a suggestion for a Jack Does podcast, and I'll have a look what we can cook up. Now this week I am in Northumberland, my absolute favourite place in the UK. I love Northumberland, and I'm going rock pooling. So they're not as diverse as some of the other rock pools in the UK, but they do have some truly weird and wonderful stuff. Not to mention some fantastic birds, and we are going to have a little audio treat of some of the birds along there as well. I will warn you, it is a little bit bristly and windy. It's amazing how wind can affect these outdoor broadcasts. So I do have a dead cat, which is not me strangling the neighbour's pet or anything. It's like a fluffy thing you put over the mic to stop wind. So for the first 10 minutes, it can be a little bit rustly. If that sort of thing annoys you, maybe give this pod a miss. It's not too bad, but it does get better as the podcast goes on. Anyway, let's get into it. Here is Jack Does Rock Pooling. Well, hello, and welcome to the Bearded Tits podcast. Now today is a beautiful, relatively still sunny day in late May, and I am in Northumberland. What am I doing in Northumberland? Well, I'm glad you asked. I am rock pooling. I absolutely love rock pooling. Being from a landlocked county like Nottinghamshire, I don't get to do it very often, but when I lived in Cornwall, I was utterly obsessed with rock pooling, loved it. The rock pools here on the northeast are nowhere near as diverse as the ones in the southwest, but they do have some specialties, some rarer northern species, and that's what I'm going to be looking for today. So we're going to have a little route around. We'll talk about what we find as we go along. It is gorgeous today. I mean, there's a little bit of wind. You might be able to pick that up a touch, but it's actually relatively still. It's lovely. I've got my Crocs on. I've got my twat hat on. Got my little pond dipping net, or rock pooling net in this case, and a bucket. Let's see what we can find. Alright, Crocs are simultaneously the best and the worst thing to wear rock pooling, because it just means you can get straight in. I always think you've got to get stuck in with rock pooling. It's no good standing on the side and dipping a net in the corner. You've got to get your feet wet, you've got to lift some rocks up. That's where you're going to find the good stuff. The trouble is, Crocs have fuck all, nearly slipped then, have fuck all grip. So, you do have to be very careful. But the other reason I'm wearing Crocs today is that there are some sandy patches here, and you do get weaver fish, which, what is that? Oh, that's a bit of weed. You get weaver fish, which are a nasty little fish that sits in the sand. I mean, they're not nasty, they're just defending themselves, I suppose. And they've got quite a nasty sting. So I would always be careful on sandy beaches if there are weaver fish around. Now, my process for rock pooling is, I'm going to put my net down here, find a good looking rock, and that's got to be one with a crevice for something to hide under. Just move some of that out of the way. And I'm going to lift this rock up now. Are we going to get anything live on the pod?
Oh, there's an eel pout. Oh, there's 2 eel pout. Lovely. Now, eel pout are otherwise known as viviparous blenny. They're not actually a blenny, but they're called that. And I'll tell you a very interesting fact I learned only the other day about eel pout, which is they're the only fish in the animal kingdom that suckles its young. They suckle their young in the, I don't know if you call it a womb, but they give birth to live young. That's why they're called viviparous, like viviparous lizards. But while they're carrying their young, they release a sort of, it's not a milk, I think it's like a mucus that the young feed on. So it's the only fish that suckles. But they are a northern specialist. I was hoping we'd find them. I didn't necessarily think we'd find them under the first rock I looked under. They're not a very big fish. They were only maybe 3 or 4 inches. They kind of look like an eel, I suppose, but they're not an eel either. They're their own kind of, in their own family. I'm chuffed with that. That's great. 2 of them as well. 2 eel pout. Okay. And there's another rock right next to it. I do realise you're all taking this on faith. I mean, I could just be talking out my arse, couldn't I? But I wouldn't do that to you guys. Right, let's lift this rock. What we got under here? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I always just give it a second to settle, because it's that fight or flight. Things will either absolutely scarper, or they'll stay deadly still. So don't be in a rush to put the rock down, and obviously be very careful as you put the rock down, because you don't want to crush anything that you might have just disturbed. Now that is interesting, but I can't remember the name of it. This is a rockpooly thing that looks like a fossil. It looks like a trilobite. I bet someone listening to this will know what it is. Looks like a limpet. I tell you what, right, I'm going to pause this and I'm going to come in when I'm recording voiceover and tell you what it is, because I can't remember the name of it. But they basically are kind of oval, and they've got a sort of really nice colour to them. Kind of a pale pink almost. Oh, I can't remember the fucking name. Okay, well, future Jack will tell you what that is. But that's cool.
Okay, so this is future voiceover Jack. Now that is a chiton, or chiton, Chiton, and they are a mollusk. They're 500 million years old. That's how long they've been on the earth for. And they look a bit like a limpet, I suppose. The best way to describe them is they're an oval flattened shape with a shell with overlapping plates. So they're quite a freaky looking thing, easy to miss, but I could not remember the name for the life of me. Anyway, let's get back to Northumberland.
There's the usual array of limpets, periwinkles, you name it, they're all here. I definitely need to do some more Rockpool ID. There's a brilliant book by Steve Truella. I can't remember the name of it, but I have got it, and that's very thorough. It goes through absolutely everything. I'm just looking out to sea now, and there's rafts of eiders. I am definitely going to take you all to go hear the eiders at the end of the podcast. If you stay to the end, that's your little treat, because eiders make quite possibly the best noise in the animal kingdom. Hermit crabs absolutely everywhere. The water's actually pretty pleasant. It's not bad. And it does make you think that rockpool animals have got to be absolutely hard as fucking nails, because they go through such extremes. They go from low... Oh, what was that? What was that? That looked like a fish. Oh shit. What the fuck was that? What are you? I've got to get you now. If I don't get this now, I'm going to look a right twat. It's a shanny. It's a shanny. Now, can I get you in the net? Go in the net. Go on. Oh, he touched the net. Okay, well, I saw what he was. I always think of shannies as southwest. These northern rock pools don't get as many blennies and gobies. If I was in Cornwall doing this, it would be absolutely littered with shannies and gobies, but not so much here. Oh, well, I've just scooped up. You can actually hear them flopping around. Shrimp or prawn. I don't know how you tell the difference between a shrimp and a prawn. I don't know if it's semantics, but what have we got? Oh, a nudibranch. Nudibranch, that's cool. That's a sea hare. They're sort of brown. I think they're a mollusk, technically. And they project this sort of purple ink when they're threatened, so I'm not going to pick it up. I'm actually finding a lot more than I expected to. Traditionally, I've always struggled with northern rock pools, but it might be that I normally come at Easter, and it's perhaps just a little bit too cold then, because at the minute, I'm finding all sorts. Finding absolutely all sorts. Right. I'm just going a bit closer to the shore now. And your eyes are incredibly important for rock pooling. You've got to look for those things that are... Oh, that was something then. You've got to look for those things darting around. What were you? You were probably a shanny, I'm going to say. And I'm just looking for those perfect rocks. I want a rock, ideally, that's nice and flat, and I can lift up, and there might very well be something hiding there. The other thing to look for is a crevice, but it depends how brave you are, because you shove your hand in, and if there's I was going to say a frog. I was going to say a frog. If there's a crab, that's not fun times, particularly if it's a velvet swimming crab. I don't think they get them as much up here, but they've got red eyes, really spiky, and they're absolute psychopaths of a fish, of a crab, sorry. They're absolute psychopaths of a crab. They'll rip your finger off. They're horrible bloody things. Could probably hear my dogs in the background. I don't normally bring my dogs out when I'm wildlife watching, but my thought was they can't do much harm rock pooling. I may be wrong. Oh, I thought you were all enjoying the lovely sounds of the Northumberland coast, and then you've got two yappy dachshunds in the background. Oh well. I'm just going to go back to the big rock pool where we found those blennies, because there were some lovely rock pools around the corner, but they didn't have the right looking rock. Oh, this looks good. Right. Let's have a go here. This is a good looking rock. Right, let's lift you up. What have we got under here? Anything? Couple of prawns. But not a lot else. Oh. Okay. Oh, this is just heaven. I'm in my absolute element. Oh, I'm going a bit deeper now. I just rolled my trousers up like a proper kind of Brit on holiday. Alright, let's lift this rock up. That's a heavy rock. Have we got anything there? No. Not as much under that one. Oh. Now you can maybe hear as well, there's a kittiwake colony not too far away from here. I mean, as where I'm rock pooling right now, I can actually see the Farne Islands. I'm stood rock pooling very close to the Farne Islands, which I was tempted to do a podcast on, but you can't land anymore at the minute because of avian flu, which is fair enough. And I thought, well, I don't really want to be on a boat because there'll be loads of people there. The boat engine will be chugging away. So I thought, well, rather than that, let's go rock pooling, which is no hardship for me. Can't see anything there. I don't know why rock pooling's got the stigma of being a thing just for kids, because I tell you what, I could do this all day. If I lived near the coast, this is what I'd be doing all the time. I'd just be out here looking for all the weird and wonderful stuff, because you just never know what you're going to find. Anything could be lurking under a rock. You could have things like octopus that are stranded, or you might even find shark or ray eggs if you're very lucky. I've just come to a deeper bit in the rock pool. There's some sargassum, which I think is actually not native. I didn't think that was up this way, but I'm pretty sure that's sargassum. Only reason I know that is I went to a talk the other day, because it was Invasive Species Week in May, and I was at a talk and they talked about sargassum. Well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop recording because I'm one-handed, and I'm going to do some serious rock pooling for half an hour, and then put everything in a bucket, and we'll talk about what I've found. Wish me luck. Okay, I'm back, and I've found some cool stuff. One very interesting find. I'm just getting out the rock pool. I've realised that trying to record a podcast and rock pool at the same time is quite difficult because my hands are all salty. Stop it. And it means it's difficult to record. So let me just open my bucket. Right. So I've got quite a nice size eel pout. Much bigger than the ones we found straight away. And they do get big-ish. I think they get to about 20 centimetres, maybe. Maybe a little bit bigger than that, actually. I think up to 40 is a big one. It's got beautiful, beautiful orange fins. And kind of banding along the back. But this one's maybe the big one, I would say, is about 10 centimetres. So I'm pretty happy with that. But, fish find of the day, brace yourself, listeners, is, if I can get it, is a Yarrell's Blenny. I've never seen one before. I've never caught one. And these are a northern specialist, so you only really get them in any numbers further north. Now, I thought it was a butterfish, which is a very kind of similar looking fish, and I was just about to release it, and then I saw on the top of its head it had two kind of almost tentacles, and that is very typical of the Yarrells. So it just goes to show, make sure you ID something correctly before you release it. And that's the first time I've ever seen one, so I'm absolutely chuffed with that. I'm really, really pleased with a Yarrell's Blenny. I have found an edible crab as well, and this one is about to shed, well, it's already shed its skin because it's really soft, it's like a marshmallow, but I'm pleased to find an edible crab. It's got a lovely kind of reddy crimson colour on the back of it. I've also found some very funky shrimp. I don't know the species, so again, what I'm going to do, future Jack, I'm giving you lots of work here. I'm going to pass over to you because you will have found out what these are. But what shrimp are they?
Hello, it's voiceover Jack again. So I think what I found was a skeleton shrimp, which is a really weird alien-looking thing. The best thing I say is Google it. I can't do it justice. It sort of looks a bit like, you know, if anyone's ever seen Men in Black, the film, and there's like the cockroach alien in that, it looks like that. That's how weird it looks. Have a Google. It's a weird one.
Thanks, future Jack. I also found some sort of marine worm. I think it's some kind of ragworm, maybe. It looks like the stuff I use for bait. So, I'm pretty chuffed with that. That Yarrell's was great. I was not expecting a Yarrell's Blenny. Absolutely fantastic. Oh, it's lovely feeling the sun on me at the minute in the wind. Well, what I'm going to do now, I think, is I'm just going to take a walk further down and see what else we can see along the coast. Well, I've left the rock pools now. Well, I say left, I'm walking alongside them, and I'm heading to a cliff top where you can perhaps hear that colony of kittiwakes. And I thought it'd be worth having a little nosy. Now, I don't want to get too close, I obviously don't want to disturb them and cause them to leave the nest or anything. But I'm just going to head down and see what I can see. I'm just surveying the rock pools now, and you've got this upper tidal limit where it's all very green, and that's where that slippery stuff is. Always avoid the green when you're rock pooling. That's the stuff that's going to break your leg. And that's because you often get freshwater inlets, so there's a lot more nutrients higher up the tide line. And the lower down you go, that's not being exposed for as long. So you get different species occupying different niches. God, there's some cracking rock pools here. I tell you what, I mean, I literally went to the first rock pool I saw and I found stuff, but I mean, these all look fantastic. They're very clear at the moment, which generally helps. I am wearing Polaroids today, which help cut through the glare. Not seeing anything stranded. Sometimes you get shoals of small mullet or sand eels stuck in the rock pools, but haven't seen any of that today. Did see a 5-bearded rockling, which is not a bad little species to find. Well, I assume it was a 5-bearded rockling. Could very well have been a shore rockling, actually. Here we go. And just coming up to the colony, presumably this is an offshoot of the Farns, because there's a lot of kittiwakes on the Farn Islands along with the puffins and whatnot. You don't generally get puffins nesting on mainland Britain, the exception being Bempton Cliffs. But here in Northumberland, you're pretty much restricted to the Farn Islands. Now, there's also a lovely muddy bank at the top here, and you can maybe hear sand martins. And there are dozens and dozens of sand martins just kiting about in the sky. I've actually seen all 4 swallow family birds today. There were swifts flying over sea houses itself. There were house martins, which have got that sort of white rump, and they were collecting mud earlier. And there were swallows nesting in the village as well, and now sand martins. So I've ticked all 4 off in one day, which is always a treat. They're just dotted. There's one flying in now, straight away, no messing around. It always amazes me with swifts how they don't land at all, apart from when they're nesting. They eat on the wing, they sleep on the wing. That's remarkable. Sand martins do at least have a little rest. You will see them sometimes perched up, but swifts are hardcore. Not that there are any swifts near the banks. There might be some higher up. Haven't seen any. But just as long as you might very well be able to hear, is a colony of kittiwakes, and there's maybe 300 or 400 kittiwakes, all dotted along the bank. And they're one of the few success stories in recent years. We're all too accustomed these days to hearing doom and gloom of British wildlife, but kittiwakes are doing relatively well in the way that they're recolonising areas that they weren't before, and in particular urban areas. If you go to places like Newcastle, Bridlington, a lot of places on the east coast, kittiwakes are moving into towns and cities, which as a casual visitor I think is fantastic and it's brilliant to see. I imagine if you've got these nesting outside your house, you're not going to be particularly chuffed. But they're really pretty birds. They're like a herring gull, but they just look a bit more innocent. They're not going to fug you. They're not going to mug you for your fish and chips. And dotted in between the kittiwakes is the odd pair of fulmars. And fulmars are stunning. They're really, really pretty. Again, probably an overlooked bird because everyone just rushes for puffins. But fulmars are kind of a petrel. They're almost like a mini albatross. Closest thing we have to an albatross in the UK. And there's a few of those dotted in. But you'd be very unlikely to get puffins nesting here. You maybe would get the odd shag, possibly a razorbill, but not puffins, not in this area. That's lovely. That's so nice to see them dotted. There's also loads of them sat along the rocks here as well, just nearby. And it's great that as long as you're responsible, I'm not getting too close. They're all sat up there quite happy. I'm not flushing them. I don't need to be any closer than this, but that's great. You see some of them, you can hear the sand martins chasing each other. Oh, there's a fulmar. I can see one now. Very different flight to the kittiwakes. It's a much heavier bird, a bit slower. Beautiful to see that fly in. That's wonderful. Well, I did promise, if you stuck to the end, we'd go and hear some eiders, so I think it's only right that I head into the harbour and go find Britain's largest duck, and certainly my favourite duck. Let's head over.
Okay, well, I promised you something as a little treat at the end, and I've come down to the beach, and you can probably hear some little birds. And these are eiders. So I've got 3 females and 3 males right by me. Another female's just come in. So these are the largest duck in the UK. They're a marine duck, and Northumberland is about as far south as you get them reliably. You do get them all around the UK coast, but they generally stay a bit further out. And this time of year, we're in late May, they have their young. So it's surprising to see a few males around. They normally kind of clear off, but the females are around as well, and they're one of my absolute favourite birds. Not only because they're very beautiful birds, the males, I've got this sort of creamy belly, bright yellow legs, a green on the back of the head, and then yellow and black for the rest of it. And the females, although they're quite dull, like a lot of ducks are dull, they've got this sort of kind of peppering of browns and blacks. Oh, there we go, the male did a great great noise there. But the thing that sells it for eiders is the noises that they make. They're very vocal little ducks, and they've got this amazing cacophony of different vocalizations, as you can hear. And I could sit and listen to eiders all day. They're absolutely fantastic. There's a male slapping up to me now. They're brilliant, and they're really tame here in Northumberland. In certain harbours, they'll come pretty close to people. So I think Great Crested Grebe probably pips the post a little bit for me. They're probably my favourite bird, but the eider comes a very close second. Great noises. There are a couple of different kinds of eider. You get Stella's eider and king eider, but they're pretty rare. These are common eider, and these are the ones that we generally get in the UK. Not much to do with rockpooling, but a little treat for you anyway. That's such a great noise. I turn into a big kid when I rockpool. I absolutely love it. And I sometimes get people looking at me a bit funny, like, why is that hairy bloke rockpooling on his own? But I love it, and that's one of the things I do miss about living in the Midlands, is that there are not really any rock pools. In fact, I was going to say Northumberland's the closest. It's not. You've got them at Yorkshire, haven't you, as well? But I love rock pooling. Any excuse to do it. If you can support the podcast on buymeacoffee.com. If you're a regular listener, you know the drill. There's a link in the description. You can support me there. Follow me on all the social media. That's also in the description. I'm going to do something a little bit different this week. I'm going to play about 30 seconds of those eiders calling before we finish the podcast. Because I tell you what, I could listen to that all day long. But I'm going to subject you to 30 seconds of it anyway, because it is the best bird call in the British Isles. They are phenomenal birds, and they make this fantastic camp sound, which I absolutely love. So here it is, and I'll see you next Tuesday for the next podcast.